A very good morning to everybody who's listening to Hello Kolkata podcast live. Want to thank everybody who joins us on all Sundays to listen to a new guest that we bring on to the Hello Kolkata podcast, talking about their journey and what they are doing for Kolkata and what their vision for Kolkata is. Before I introduce our very special guest today, I want to give you a quick recap of what we do typically of the week that was. Last week was very eventful. We just concluded the seventh phase of elections. Some of the exit poll results are out. Irrespective of how you feel, we should have the final results on the 4th of June, and we'll await that. But over the course of the whole week, we had some amazing developments as well. Kolkata Knight Riders defeated Sunrisers Hyderabad in their third IPL championship. We celebrated that as well. And it has been a fantastic all through consistent performance by the team. A lot of lessons on LinkedIn should have already been posted about that. Then we wanted to talk about the STPI technology software technology park that has been launched in Kolkata Sector 5, and it spans a huge sprawling area which will provide a lot of, I would say, room for organizations and IT organizations to grow from that space. So great work there as well. Then we saw some of the developments in the Kolkata Metro with new coaches arriving from Dalian in China. So we'll see when those the new fleet is underway in use in the transport. Also, Adani Ports and SEZ secured a key contract handling, mandate with the Shama Prasad Mukherjee port in Kolkata. So that's again looking at what development this new joint venture brings for Kolkata as well. Apart from that, I think there was outside the domain of, I would say, sports and business, even in art and cinema, Kolkata made its mark at the Cannes recently hosted Cannes Film Festival, where Kolkata's Anusua Sengupta won Best Actress, and Payal Kapadia's All You Imagine Is Light won Best Film in the Grand Prix of the 77th Cannes film. But that also has a very strong Kolkata connection with two brothers, Dhritiman and Ronobir, who are the music director and the cinematographer for that movie as well. So congratulations to all of them. We also talked about some headway into the Northeast Frontier Railway, where there was a Sevok Rangpo rail tunnel, which is connecting Sikkim with Darjeeling, and that project is underway as well. So great going there. And two more updates, which is great for the Kolkata ecosystem as well. We heard recently that 100x VC has invested in Hamsa Biotech, which is founded by Harshad Lalwani and Swapnil Sinha. Major congratulations to the Hamsa Biotech team. And last one, before I get into our podcast, Gantrex, which is a global leader in production and distribution of crane rail solutions, has inaugurated a new office in Kolkata. So many congratulations and welcome to Team Gantrex. With that out of the way, now let me get into today's podcast. With today's podcast, we have a very special leader, a founder, and entrepreneur. We have featured his journey in the past through a leader spotlight in the early days of Kolkata Calling. So he's been a very strong proponent and supporter of our community, of our page. So today we are extremely thrilled to welcome Naman Shah. Naman Shah is the founder and CEO of NowPurchase, a fantastic company which is a technology-driven procurement platform for the metal manufacturing industry. And it was founded in 2017 by Naman and Aakash with a very small investment from Nipha Group. But in 2022, they raised 2.4 million in funding, led by Orios Venture Partners and InfoEdge Ventures. And it's one of the very few companies in Kolkata which has raised institutional funds, with now Hamsa following very closely as well. It has built a fantastic digital marketplace. We'll dive deep into NowPurchase. But a little bit about Naman. Before NowPurchase, he's worked in various roles across, Biz Equity, Fresh Mentors, and he's been involved in various other initiatives such as the Young India Kolkata chapter, the Teach for India initiative, all of that. So we'll unpack Naman's journey with us today. And very close to home, he's an alumni of St. Xavier's Collegiate School, Kolkata. Then he later went on to do a further degree with National University of Singapore and University of Pennsylvania, Wharton. So with that little bit of introduction out of the way, let's bring in Naman to the main stage. Naman, good morning and welcome to Hello Kolkata.
Good morning, Sumit. Thanks for having me over. It's a pleasure.
It's the pleasure is mutual, Naman. And firstly, thank you for agreeing to be part of this podcast. And we had done a leadership spotlight with you last year. Some fantastic, I would say, insights that you'd given, not just about how NowPurchase wants to grow, but also about building a team, building a culture, and your vision for Kolkata and what you know you think can change and should change in the near term. So we'll unpack all of that. Before we go into now purchase and what you're doing today for the procurement landscape for metal manufacturing, if you can just introduce yourself through your journey a bit for our viewers and listeners. You've been a Kolkata boy through and through. Tell us a little bit about your early days growing up, and then different things that you tried before you started your entrepreneurship journey.
Um, born and brought up in Calcutta. Did my schooling through and throughout at a Catholic school, St. Xavier's Collegiate School, Park Street, across the 12 years. And I think from a schooling perspective, those were really formative years because I ended up spending the last 5 years of my school life very active in the school administration across all different roles, right from house captain to organizing festivals, and then was fortunate to be awarded the Xaverian of the Year in my passing year as well. And that
Wow.
was extremely formative because, and extremely, I would say, insightful years because, got to interact with such a large spectrum of people
Hmm.
and get to see the world beyond, because otherwise you end up being protected in your childhood years by your
Sure.
parents, and very rightly. And from the family perspective, I come from a large joint family, so always spent had a lot of time with my family and my cousins. Believe it or not, we are a little over 30 people under one roof,
Wow.
so it's a
Wow.
very different. So that was extremely, you know, a different life back at home, because unlike you know I had sort of a friend group and the social network within the home itself in
Hmm.
some way. um, Apart from this, I think my grandfather used to work in Texmaco. He
Hmm.
was born and brought up in Rajasthan. He shifted to Bengal in just around early 1950s, and
Hmm.
he used to work in Texmaco, which is a manufacturing rail company. And
Yeah.
since then, he sort of moved out and actually started out and made a startup before the word startup became so mainstream, and ended
Hmm.
up doing a startup alongside his job out with a small rented machine shop. And while he was continuing his job, and slowly that machine shop became his full-time job, and he started a manufacturing business from that. And that
Hmm.
manufacturing business is a small and medium business today, run by the family, extended family, my father, his brothers, other uncles, and so on,
Hmm.
and my grandfather's family, brothers as well. So that has been a very big, I would say, the most, biggest inspiration for me to
Hmm.
start up and to venture out in this entrepreneurship journey. And
Yeah.
he has been the biggest supporter for this journey. So I thought that
Yeah.
would be very relevant to bring up here. And
Yeah.
post schooling, I didn't have any plans to actually move outside India for studies, but luck would have it, I happened to apply for this fantastic university, NUS, in Singapore, and
Yeah.
along with my friend who was very adamant to go there, I ended up going there and then spending almost 7 years overseas, in
Yeah.
Singapore and then in US. And that was, again, I would say, a completely different life because primarily, like I said, all in all, schooling was in Calcutta. So there you
Yeah.
were in a Asian university with a lot of folks from across Asia and across the world,
Yeah.
and some people even across India, because even within India, every part of India comes with its own culture and so on. So that was
Yeah.
very interesting. And there I felt, the entrepreneurship, got a really big boost with me getting to see the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Singapore as well as at
Hmm.
a university. And
Yeah.
with that, we sort of got the scholarship to go to this NUS program in UPenn at Wharton
Yeah.
Business School.
Yeah.
and spent time working there with a startup and taking courses simultaneously. I would
Hmm.
say that was the most critical year where really things changed around, and I was pretty much sure that this is what I would do once I graduate and get some work experience.
Wow.
Um, and that was a really big year for me, 2013.
2013. Okay. So I think just to go back a bit, because you said that one, you come from a joint family, which is a fairly you know a large family in what you mentioned, and then obviously your extended family, your father, your cousins are involved in the family business. So one is obviously the usual pressure that you would have, that to join the family business, that's always one path, and the other is to find something on your own to do, and venture on your own. So was that ever the case, that there was a need for you to join the family business, or you always wanted to step outside and do something on your own?
So I would say that within the business there has been, every the business like started by my grandfather has evolved, and a lot of
Yeah.
people have set up, unique businesses within the group itself,
Hmm.
and that encouragement was always there. So I was very lucky, and given it's an extended family, there are multiple working hands, and
Hmm.
that also proved to be a big reason I was able to take this large risk and leap of faith and
Hmm.
start Now Purchase alongside Aakash in 17. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is, I would say, pretty much been fortunate on that account.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then now stepping forward, so you mentioned that 2013 sort of you had the flavor of entrepreneurship in Singapore, in US, and you sort of knew that you had to get into becoming an entrepreneur, solving a problem. Between 2013 and then finally founding Now Purchase in 2017, if you can take us a little bit through that journey, because I know you worked also in business development in roles, but then how sort of that Now Purchase idea evolved. When did you find that this was a need that needed to be solved?
So, till the time I sort of got into a place where I was pretty sure that I would be taking up this journey, I was, thinking about jobs in consulting, where first couple of
Hmm.
my internships came from as well. But then the role completely changed, and I ended up working for two startups, both based in the US. One edutech company based out of California called Fresh Mentors, where again I was very early stage, started by Stanford alumni. Was working very closely with the founders to do business development for
Yeah.
their peer-to-peer education mentoring platform, and
Hmm.
that was very interesting because this was a company sub single digits, in number of team members, so
Yeah.
as early as it gets, and worked there for a while, and then switched gears and worked for another startup started by an entrepreneur who was starting his third company in the fintech domain out of Philadelphia, called Biz Equity.
Yeah.
There again, joined them when they were less than 10 people, and ended up working for them for close to 3 years. Um,
Hmm.
and then also ended up, getting the opportunity to expand their footprint in Asia by opening an office in Singapore and India for them. So I've sort of almost got an opportunity to, I would say, build a mini startup within that startup with this
Hmm.
expansion in Asia Pac, and that really helped. And while all of this was going, the idea was to always venture out and start up on my own, and we were playing with multiple ideas, some with cousins, some with friends, right
Hmm.
from edutech domain to almost digital marketing platforms. One of
Yeah.
the ideas where I did spend a good amount of time was a company we started called EdZ, and
Hmm.
this was along simultaneously with studies and work. EdZ was a education platform for 9 to 12 students, where the idea was to get the best of teachers from the top schools of the top 10 cities and make
Hmm.
them access the rest 50 cities and towns.
Okay.
While we were able to build this was almost like, I would say, Byju's or an
Yeah, I
academy
was
or
going to say pre Byju's or during Byju's. Yeah.
yeah, and it was a very much content-led platform. But one of the big things which we did not take into account and which was a big learning was some macro factors, right? Like internet bandwidth, which is allowing us to do this live podcast today, was
Yeah.
missing there. And that
Yeah.
became one of the biggest roadblocks as we built content. And
Hmm.
that became one of the reasons for it to sort of, slowly die down and transition it out. Um,
Yeah.
Then in 16, I was pretty sure that maybe in a year would come back, and was looking at how technology pretty much goes through evolution. And typically, if you think about, we start technology using as consumers. We
Yeah.
would order a Book My Show, Flipkart, Make My Trip,
Sure.
Ola, Uber are the first technology thing consumers use करते हैं. एंड
Yeah.
उसके बाद धीरे 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 ऑर्गेनाइज्ड बिजनेसेस यूज करती है, बैंक्स पुट इन
Yeah.
ERPs, banks put in
Mm.
transaction systems,
Sure.
consulting firms would put in technology, and then
Yeah.
slowly unorganized businesses like infrastructure and construction would come up and take, and manufacturing would adopt technology. So
Hmm.
realize that this is happening, and realize that India में भी B2B में कुछ होगा, because B2C was a story which was already playing out very well with all these
The Flipkarts
successes,
of the world. Yeah. Flipkart,
Flipkarts,
Swiggy.
Zomato's,
Yeah.
Swiggy's of the world. So started looking at B2B in general and looking at various subcategories. And in one of my interactions with Aakash, who's my cousin, he mentioned that at his factory, how day-to-day procurement is still so archaic, where he has to call up multiple vendors and
Hmm.
look at for quotes, figure out where the vehicles are,
Hmm.
reconcile bills. Bills are sometimes coming in different formats. Some are
Hmm.
handwritten. Some people don't file their GST returns on time, and so on and so forth. And that became the impetus to start Now Purchase 1.0, which is very
Hmm.
different from Now Purchase today. But in 2017, Now Purchase was primarily a e-commerce platform for day-to-day
Hmm.
supplies of factories, right from tools, tackles, bearings, electrical, safety, and so on. And
Yeah.
that is how the journey till starting Now Purchase, I would say, evolved between 13 and 17.
Wow. And Akash, wanted to also understand, because you mentioned the adoption of technology, and obviously 2017 was still early days in terms of B2B SaaS models to come in. Uh, but you chose, and I don't know whether that was by design or destiny, but you chose an industry as a whole which has always been very late to adopt technology, modern technology, as we know, which is manufacturing. That's one. And then even within manufacturing, the function or the vertical that you chose, procurement, which is also even behind other functions, like, let's say, IT, sales, HR. Purchase comes much later. So always behind in technology adoption. Did you really feel that there would be an opportunity or a challenge to go and change the technology landscape in purchase?
So I would say that answer lies within that question, right? If there was
Hmm.
not a challenge, the opportunity wouldn't be there.
Hmm.
And because of that large challenge, humongous challenge of adoption, is the large opportunity which lies.
Hmm.
And the reason why we chose procurement is,
Hmm.
depending on the industry you're looking at,
Hmm.
procurement cost could be anywhere between 40 and 70% of revenue.
Hmm. Wow. Okay.
And unless you are an IP driven company which has come up with some intellectual property, which is really,
Hmm.
or created a brand which is helping you get that large premium of margins,
Hmm.
95% of manufacturers are working on a cost plus model,
Hmm.
which means that the control on their selling price is relatively limited.
Hmm.
And that means for them to extract that better margin or come up with, relies on cutting costs or optimizing costs. And
Hmm.
procurement is one such big function. That is one, but not only cost saving. Unlike consumers, when we are buying clothes or when we're buying electronics, it's for our own personal consumption.
Yeah.
Uh, in B2B, procurement is a different ball game.
The
The
stakes are very
guy,
high.
stakes are very high, and it's a
Yeah.
multi-stakeholder game. Yeah,
Yeah.
carrying on from that stakes
Yeah.
word you use, it's a multi-stakeholder game.
Yeah.
The guy who's using your product versus the guy who requires it versus the guy who authorizes it versus the guy who
Yeah.
orders it versus the guy who pays for it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually the guy who is rolling up all to this, are 6 7 different individuals.
Sure.
So with so many different individuals, a lot of time information flow is not clean, which means
Hmm.
that factories could be held up, production could be held up for a day or two, which can
Yeah.
result in mammoth losses.
Hmm.
And someone who brings efficiency in procurement makes sure that your factory is running. Because if you think about, essentially, a manufacturer's job should be manufacture and sell. If he wants to
Yeah.
sell, if not just manufacture, he should not be worrying about whether the material will reach my factory on time or not. Those things should be able to take care with his partners or vendors who would take care of
Hmm.
these things. So that is the, I would say, underlying thought where we came from.
And I think what you targeted had pain points on both the buyer and the seller side, right? From factories, it's about having an efficient process of bringing my material in for production, and avoid delays, avoid ballooning cost. But from the seller side, as you mentioned, that there are so many stakeholders to manage, so many hoops to jump, so many people to convince, get their buy-in, move the information forward, approval flows, the hierarchy and the chain of command. So there was pain on both sides, which I believe you tried to solve through the Now Purchase platform.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, the eventual, if all stakeholders are not benefiting from the
Hmm.
platform,
Hmm.
eventually the platform scale gets limited. So whether
Yeah.
it's the seller or the buyer or the logistics partner we work with,
Hmm.
all of them have to feel that they have made a movement from their yesterday when they got
Yeah.
associated with Now Purchase, and that
Yeah.
movement is very important. And that movement might come in a way of better quality of life. That movement might come in better margins, cost savings, reduced working capital. So that movement can be both financial and non-financial. And
Hmm.
reason I'm bringing this up is that you have to think about it, right? The average trader or average supplier is an owner plus couple of office boys plus a couple of junior executives.
Sure.
So that pretty much means that owner is running the end-to-end show.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that means if a vehicle gets stalled at 1 o'clock at night at the factory, the owner is getting the call
Hmm.
because anyone in his company is not going to be able to take the call most of the times.
Yeah.
And so while financial gains and efficiency is great, but eventually can it make him get to a place where he's able to take care of his business in a way which is more low touch, and he's actually
Hmm.
improving his own quality of life as well.
Sure. Sure. And Naman, coming to the Now Purchase, the beginning of it, obviously it's a very specialized domain, like one, metal manufacturing, two, procurement. Where did you bring this expertise from to be able to build a product that services this industry, this function?
So, what we started in middle of 17 was a procurement platform for stores and supplies for
Hmm.
all kinds of factories. It was not focused on metal manufacturing.
Got it.
And we did that for almost 2.5 years till end of 19, early 2020,
Hmm.
just few months before COVID.
Hmm.
And we scaled that business. We tried multiple pivots, multiple models, pure e-commerce to assisted buying to a procurement SaaS solution to a in-store tablet display where people could place orders. We tried 3 4 ways. Each of them got us to a movement. We were able to make progress, but it was not where we were actually going from 0 to 1. We were making
Hmm.
movement, but it was not somewhere we were finding that elusive product market fit, and
Hmm.
we were not able to really scale up. And then it we realized that this way to scale up that model meant really digitizing the vendor side, and that was something we didn't have resources for. And then in early 2020 we decided that we will not focus on every industry. We
Sure.
will look at one segment and really become
Hmm.
the best for them.
Wonderful.
And we looked at various segments, right from metals to real estate to FMCG. And we came to a realization that metals had 2 3 interesting things. One, East India was a large hub for metals,
Sure.
which meant that we were sitting close to a demand and supply market. That was one.
Hmm.
Second, as long as India keeps developing and growing, everything around our physical infrastructure is going to be made of metal, whether it's electronics, automobiles, roads,
Sure.
bridges, houses. And that
Yeah.
means metal demand is going to go up, and so will
Absolutely.
demand for procurement of raw materials, which go into metal making.
Yeah.
That was second. And third, and most interestingly, which was totally fascinating to me, was we all know of large raw material brands. So if I ask you, Subed, which is a large cement raw material brand, which is a paint raw material brand, could you tell me a name?
Like manufacturing or just raw material?
Just a large brand of cement or paints.
Ambuja, L&T. Sure.
Likewise. So, And in raw materials of metal manufacturing, we're talking about categories like metal scrap, ferroalloys. I did
Yeah.
not know of any
Unknown,
name,
unknown, relatively
unknown,
unknown. Yeah.
and still a very, very, very large industry, multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting where we saw unknown brands, big industry, big raw metal category, but we don't know who serves it. And that sort of these three things really said that let's
Hmm.
take metal manufacturing and then subcategory of foundries as our go-to space
Yeah.
as we started building the version 2.0. And of course, as we were just about to build it, we got hit by the pandemic in
Hmm.
March 2020, and
Yeah.
that led to a slight uh, navigation or a detour where for 4 months, 5 months, we leveraged our old e-commerce platform to sell
Hmm.
COVID essentials.
Okay.
And we were one of the large sellers of COVID essentials out of Calcutta. And
Hmm.
we used that platform to actually acquire a lot of metal manufacturers because the owners of these factories needed the sanitizers, the thermometers.
Yeah.
We were delivering it to them. And when these factories just opened up,
Yeah.
we actually spent team members who would go and set up SOPs, who would tell people what to do, what not to do, deploy
Hmm.
infrared checking at the factories, in the pure hope that we are building a strong relationship. That when we are
Hmm.
able to pivot and open our raw material business for metal manufacturing, we have
Yeah.
a demand base to go after. So that is a story of the pivot and slightly what happened during those times.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting because I mean, obviously with pandemic, obviously we know how hard the times were, but it also I think emphasized the need for technology across industry, across sectors. That given that things can be so uncertain, you can be detached from your buyer and supplier and seller. You need to have a technology platform which can make that possible, even if you have such kind of interruptions and challenges. But interesting that Naman, you mentioned that you were able to flip very quickly back and forth to accommodate the challenge of pandemic, but then used it as a lever to acquire more customers to set up Now Purchase for success. So if we come to Now Purchase now, and you had mentioned, in your last interview that there's a tremendous potential in this industry which is largely untapped, and there is a lot of, as you were talking about, inefficiencies that can be improved upon and increase the productivity of the metal manufacturers. So today, Now Purchase, in you mentioned version 1, and now I don't know version 2, 3 where you are, but today what is the scope of your product and services, and what are you offering to your customers, which are both on the buyer and the seller side?
Sure, sure. So today, Now Purchase is a full stack suite for the metal manufacturing industry,
Hmm.
where we look at two of their processes very closely, which is the procurement of raw materials and how they use their raw materials in the manufacturing process itself.
Okay.
Because eventually you're buying raw materials to eventually manufacture it or melt something and make a alloy. So in the metal manufacturing world, basically you buy a bunch of raw materials, melt
Sure.
it in a furnace to make a specific grade of alloy.
Sure.
And we felt that if you're able to marry these two aspects, the raw
Hmm.
material procurement as well as how they melt it eventually in the furnace, you are going to be able to create a very, very compelling solution.
Hmm.
And that's how Now Purchase is structured today. We have a digital managed marketplace where we supply all these raw materials to little over 250 plus factories,
Sure.
and we provide them with a software platform called Metal Cloud, which helps
Hmm.
them optimize their melting process, which is basically taking the raw materials we supply and
Hmm.
figuring out what's the best way to melt it, what is the best recipe, what is the best
Okay.
combination. And this is done
Okay.
through a combination of an algorithm, a machine learning platform, as well as some IoT driven sensors. This software suite itself is now
Hmm.
live at little over 100 factories,
Wow.
and this is factories across the country. And that's how Now Purchase is today, where we are looking at driving procurement of raw materials but creating a strong compelling technology edge by really optimizing their manufacturing and raw material melting operations. So that is
Very
where
interesting.
we are today.
Very interesting. And Naman, help me understand. So this is even today. it is purely a platform or product, or are you involving certain elements of services as well, where you're providing consultation, advisory to your customers?
So it is a digital managed marketplace in the sense we are the ones who are supplying the raw materials at the end door of the customer. We are the
Sure.
ones assuring quality, customer service, and so on. So that is one. Second, consultation or solution selling is built in on how we deal with our customers when they want to buy a new raw material or when they want to adopt our metal cloud solution. We don't
Yeah.
look at consultation as a business stream because
Hmm.
that we believe is a little challenging to scale at a rapid
Sure.
speed.
Sure.
And uh, we believe that is something that's going to be part of the way customers are going to be buying our products and services itself. So when a customer
Hmm.
buys a raw material, he should know why is he buying this versus that. If a
Hmm.
customer, and we are using the software as our consultation layer, because customer
Sure.
is able to rely on the software and actually figure out
Yeah.
which raw material is better for him and how can he actually use that raw material better. Because
Yeah.
pure person led consultation and selling is less scalable, but somewhere
Yeah.
something which is
Absolutely.
driven by technology and digital suite is very much scalable. So that is how we think of it.
And since you mentioned fairly advanced technology with IoT sensors telling you what the right mix should be, an algorithm which is telling certain scenarios and predicting certain results, it's fairly sophisticated for metal manufacturing. So did you have challenges in bringing this new technology, getting it set up, integrating with their existing technology stack, which could be slightly outdated? If you can share something around that as well.
Sure, sure. No, I'm the challenge continues to be till I think the challenge is a I would not say that this is a ongoing challenge, and it's been
Sure.
a long road. Where product wise as well as the go to market has changed
Hmm.
continuously, and now we have found a go to market where we are able to scale up for to these 100 factories.
Yeah.
Because while we are at 100 factories where this technology solution is today deployed, most of these 100 factories have come to in the last 12 months. If I
Hmm.
look at the first 2.5 years, it was sub 20 factories, and the
Hmm.
last 1 year it's 80 plus, and we planning to hit a little over 200 this year.
Hmm.
And the first couple of years in terms of the product as well as how we approaching them was a big challenge. Like, just to give an example, we realized that customers are very sensitive to this because they feel that we are trying to replace them, or we are trying to tell them that we know better. And
Hmm.
we realized that that is not the goal. We have built a technology which is gonna empower them, increase their productivity, and that
Hmm.
messaging was not coming across. The
Hmm.
first leg of failure was primarily where we realized that our messaging comes to across to the customer as if we are trying to replace
Know
their
it all.
production in charge, building in charge.
Sure.
And
Hmm.
we realized that that's not the goal. We want to empower them. So how do we
Yeah.
change the positioning? So that is where the first phase of learning went. Second phase
Hmm.
of learning was, today this Metal Cloud platform has three or four key modules. And our first module, while the most powerful, required a decent amount of effort from the customer. As in,
Hmm.
customer will get like huge benefit, but usko bhi काफी मेहनत करना पड़ेगा. It
Hmm.
can't be like a plug and play कि उसको फायदा मिलने लगेगा. And
Hmm.
we realize that people who are very diligent, very sincere, and gonna put in that effort is difficult to
Yeah.
find.
Hmm.
And so our second module, which was a more of a plug and play module where we were integrating with a couple of devices at the factory and giving
Hmm.
them analytics on how they could optimize their operations, was
Yeah.
where we found the real acquisition. Because we were able to go in a factory within 48 hours, set up a integration, and in another 72 hours they started to get real time suggestions and analytics on how they could optimize. So they felt
Hmm.
as if it was like the good old consumer thing, where you are having to sit back and actually start getting some benefits before you put
Yeah.
in the effort. And
Hmm.
that really became a way we were able to acquire a good majority of these 100 plus factories that I was speaking to. So yeah, it's been a continuous road.
Yep.
Alongside that, I think we have been fortunate to be able to work with some of our old customers, our own family business, to be able to pilot some of these ideas, which has
Hmm.
helped us also reiterate and iterate and reiterate again
Yeah.
sort of to get to the right product.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. And Naman, coming to the sort of the launchpad to growth, uh, about raising investment and raising funding, and you were very very fortunate. Obviously, fortune favors the brave and competent, but you were very fortunate to get institutional investing for something like Now Purchase, which was sort of very new in concept, and but also for better or for worse, being based in Calcutta. So how was that fundraising journey for you? And obviously, the second part of that question would be, now with that institutional investor backing, what are the expansion plans? What are the growth plans for Now Purchase? But first, let's deep dive into how difficult or easy was it to raise funds.
So, the investment with Orios and InfoEdge was, depending on how you look at it, was our second or third attempt at institutional fundraise.
Hmm.
We had failed a couple of times.
Hmm.
The first avatar of Now Purchase, where we were a horizontal B2B commerce
Sure.
company for factories, we probably would have pitched in person to a little over 50.
Hmm.
If I take virtual telephone, because virtual was not that big a deal then, we
Yeah.
would a lot of in-person meetings in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi,
Yeah.
and a lot of telephonics as well. Close to 100 odd pitches, and a lot of times we came very very close and still
Yeah.
so far, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
This was with the first, and in the first model, when we just pivoted, we felt that given
Hmm.
our backing and the pivot, we had reached some place where we would be able to still raise. And this time we obviously had learned from the first attempt, so we did sense out the market, meet 10 to 15 funds, and understood that we're not there yet.
Hmm.
Then eventually in you know April, May of 21, or mid of 21, is when we said, okay, we know what is needed. Let's
Hmm.
go after this. The markets were also ripe. The fundraise was at an
Hmm.
all-time high. And we had learned a lot from our previous two things. We realized
Hmm.
that we have to have a differentiator, a niche, a sweet spot, which is able to help us grow.
Sure.
We also were able to correct some of our, uh, you know, weaknesses and spots in terms of the approach, the pitch, the team building, get the
Hmm.
right team members in our teams around finance, tech. Ankan
Hmm.
joined us as our CTO. He came
Hmm.
from a good experience with startup, building his own. With all
Hmm.
this entire setup, we were able
Yeah.
to hit the market in June of 21. And again, it was a long ride with
Yeah.
another 50 odd pitches. And we were able to finally get the first yes from Orias and InfoEdge. And I
Hmm.
would say that this whole journey, we had partners who we worked closely with, a partner called Basic Roots. We worked closely with them for the
Hmm.
fundraising journey. But what we realized was that, on this, when you're looking at the first institutional round, the
Yeah.
market large is important, but figuring out your starting spot, which is going to be a niche where you have a clear differentiator, is
Hmm.
extremely important. Today, while
Yeah.
we are a large metal manufacturing focused company, back then
Hmm.
when we raised it only on the backing of building a procurement solution for the foundry business, which is a
Hmm.
subsegment of the large industry. And
Sure.
you know, we realize that even if you focus on a niche and able to create that product market fit, there's
Yeah.
lots of folks who are interested, right? Because even if Facebook started out just in Harvard and it was an intercollegiate platform,
Yeah.
um, and that sort of became our inspiration. And then we were able to raise the first round from Orias InfoEdge, along with Neeraj, as our angel investor.
Hmm.
Um, we've been able to build on top of that and scale up the business approximately. Today, if I look at June 21 and look at this month of May 24, we are lower, almost at 12 times the scale of that.
Yeah.
So from that month of June 21 to May of 24. And that scale up has come from expanding into the geographies of West Bengal, Jharkhand, and now slowly looking at Maharashtra and Karnataka as well.
Yeah.
Along with that, expanding our entire product suite of raw materials, setting up more infrastructure of private labels, scrap processing, and so on and so forth. Um, Along this journey, we again needed to do the scale up. So we
Hmm.
did end up, raising around just in December of last year, which is yet unannounced, which again backing from some of the existing investors as well as new.
Yeah.
So having been through this, journey of 4 times and with coming out success a couple of times,
Yeah.
it's been incredibly helpful to have a very strong support team with
Yeah.
Ash, some of our core team members, Ankan, Pratik, Sachin, all these guys helping closely, as well as the partners like Basic Roots. While that has been one aspect of it, you
Hmm.
asked me about the Calcutta piece.
Yeah.
I would say that yes, there is a bias, but I
Hmm.
would say pre-COVID and post-COVID, the scenario is very different.
Hmm.
And people are understanding that businesses can be built from anywhere.
Yeah.
There are large, interesting businesses coming out of Kanpur, Indore, Jaipur, Surat,
Yeah.
Bhubaneswar, and Calcutta. So there is
Yeah.
no reason that it can't be built. So in pre-COVID, post-COVID, there has been a clear difference in thinking.
Yeah.
Where pre-COVID, a lot of pitches were like, how will you find people? How will you grow? How will you scale? Post-COVID, a lot of that has reduced, and people understand that you are able to find your niche, find and build the right employer brand, and get the
Yeah.
right people to work with you. So that has been a good change. And this change, I would say, is a combination of this plus as well as a lot of successes which are coming out from Calcutta, both in the traditional and new age businesses. If I look at the new age businesses, the Wow Momos or M Pocket, all of them are doing extremely well. And
Yeah.
they both would be a $500 million to $1 billion close to valuation companies today. And
Yeah.
so that is one side. And on the traditional side, I think there is no shortage, right? We have enough inspiration to look all around us. Whether you want to look at a large FMCG brand like Imami, look at a
Hmm.
cement brand like Sri Cement, look at a
Sure.
Century Ply, look at the
Yeah.
steel conglomerates, or even look at the new age consumer successes like Manyavar. So
Yeah.
I think there is no shortage of inspiration. And that
Hmm.
is, I think, the way I look at this whole story. Yeah.
Yeah. Naman, you mentioned something very important that, which was probably one of the outside the platform, outside the industry and solution, but it was also very important to have a great team built around the core team. And I had asked this question earlier to you also. Like, now purchase has grown, as you mentioned, 12 times in these last 3 years. Uh, how have you built that team out? How have you identified the right people? And what is the value proposition as an employer that you give these employees and these talent to come on board on this journey? What kind of culture are you trying to build? And because you also said that you had prior experience working with two early stage startups, you've looked at very closely your family business. So how does this all fit in terms of building a team, an organization, a culture that can be set up for success?
Sure. So if I would look at two words when we're looking at hiring people or building our team, I
Hmm.
would say it's hungry and humble.
Mm-hmm.
And these two are primarily the two key factors we are looking at when we are looking at people.
Hmm.
And why I say this is while hungry is more self explanatory, looking at people who are driven, people who are ambitious, we're also
Sure.
looking at people who are the hunger is being driven by a lot of humility, driven by where they come from, and driven by their passion to grow.
Hmm.
Because what we believe is this industry which we are in, the opportunity presents itself. Anyone who's willing to actually roll up their sleeves, put in the hard work smartly, work in a dedicated, sincere, empathetic manner, there is huge
Hmm.
opportunity. And that opportunity is our responsibility and my responsibility as a founder to provide to the people. And you know just to pick an example, right? Yesterday on our company Slack channel,
Yeah.
it was two people's work anniversary. So there
Okay.
was some folks congratulating them. One of them completed 2 years, and one of them completed 6 years.
Hmm.
And both of their folks has had a very interesting journey. One of them is in our tech team, joined us fresh out of college, uh, and as a fresh engineer out of college. And in a couple of years, he is now spearheading a lot of our IoT and backend efforts.
Mm-hmm.
and he does not happen to be from Calcutta. He got recruited from LPU in Punjab and joined us fresh out of college. So that has been one place where we are very actively hiring fresh folks from different universities: SRM, LPU, IM Kashipur, closer to home, JU, Xavier's, IIT Kharagpur, NIT Durgapur. All these are folks where we are actively hiring, and we believe these are places where we are able to get that hungry, humble talent who's wanting to
Hmm.
make the difference. That
Hmm.
is one set of place. And
Yeah.
second set, the other gentleman who completed 6 years,
Yeah.
he heads a lot of our P&L, is the business head for our clusters today. He joined us 6 years back as one of our junior and mid-level sales managers. He
Hmm.
does not happen to be from Calcutta. He's from Haridwar, uh, you know, born and brought up there, did his education there in the region in Delhi, worked in Delhi for a couple of B2B commerce companies, and ended up taking a chance on us. And we ended up taking a chance on him to come over and be one of our sales team members 6 years back.
Wonderful.
And in those 6 years, he has grown tremendously, both as an individual, also from his role perspective, and also from his own progress in his career perspective. And today
Sure.
he heads the largest team in the company with close to 30 people directly or indirectly reporting to him. And he started off
Wonderful.
as an individual contributor. I would say these are two sides of the story,
Sure.
with
Hmm.
getting folks from outside the city and being open to that. A lot of fresh talent coming from colleges. These are two clear ways. Alongside that, obviously, we have been fortunate to be able to get a lot of good talent from the city itself,
Hmm.
who are not necessarily from the manufacturing space. So one thing
Yeah.
interesting is that a lot of our team members are not actually from manufacturing, and they come from various kinds of industries,
Yeah.
but they came from a place where they were driven, hungry, humble, and they wanted to
Hmm.
make an impact. Folks who had finance, HR come from various different industries, media, new age tech. Then there are a lot of folks who are currently in our operations team. Actually, they come from consumer industry. They come from fashion, textile, garments, and they were doing
Hmm.
operations there. A lot of procurement team members actually come from different infrastructure construction spaces as well. So we have a very
Yeah.
wide variety, but these have been the three legs where people have joined us. A lot of fresh grads from undergrad business, a lot of folks from outside the city who are ready to take a chance, and thirdly, a lot of people from Calcutta. So that
Yeah.
is the places where we hire. Now, why, you also asked me another part about the opportunity and culture. So
Yeah.
I think the opportunity is in the examples that I just gave,
Sure.
where there's a huge amount of opportunity. It does not need to have a premium business school tag
Hmm.
to give you that opportunity or a premium company experience. As long as you
Yeah.
are wanting to come up, get down, and get the work done, I think there is enough opportunity to grow in now purchase.
Hmm.
In terms of our culture, we had an exercise last year where we spoke about having a culture statement, and the team came up with a statement called ASET, which was
Mm-hmm.
around acting, collaborating with empathy, and innovating with teamwork, with ASET.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
is quite critical. We really speak a lot about how people think about empathy in the workplace, how they think about understanding each other, and how they think about these aspects. So that
Hmm.
is where we are, and we believe there is a huge amount of opportunity. We are always hiring for a bunch of roles across our teams, right from junior
Wonderful.
to leadership, not only in Calcutta now, but also in our offices in Maharashtra as well. So yeah, that's a little bit more, and I'm sure
Wonderful.
this is the most passionate thing for me as we
Yeah.
build the next phase of growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Naman, sort of moving to a different domain, and obviously connected to all of what we've been talking about, is you mentioned that post COVID there has been a certain fresh burst of energy in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Calcutta, in terms of adapting to technology, people taking more risks, people stepping out of their comfort zone to start on their own. There have been so many success stories and some still in progress. which we are all closely tracking. Now, I'm not going to say now that you have made it, but obviously, it's always a journey. But you have a very good, you're in a good position of experience of, having pivoted a couple of times, done a few pitches, some successful, some not so successful. Now, with that the benefit of hindsight, when you're looking at young, entrepreneurs, young founders, take the plunge, uh, what would be a few things that you would want them to know from your journey that could help them potentially, build their businesses?
So obviously it's a learning journey. I'm also learning every day and
Sure.
reaching out to the people who are few steps ahead and seeing from them. So I think one of the things is asking people, right? There is always good to ask, and reaching out to people. With the advent of social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, the
Yeah.
world is much closer than you think. And even with the WhatsApp groups today with different founders, you're able to
Yeah.
reach out to a founder who's running a few thousand-person company, and just understanding how you scale up from 100 to 500 people and so on. How do you
Mhm.
manage 1,000 reportees?
Yeah.
uh, these kind of things. So one is asking, right? That is, I would say, the
Mhm.
number one thing. Just open up, ask. You will get a few no's, but you just need one yes. And that same
Mhm.
one yes, that same journey also applies to this whole fundraise route, which is also again one yes. I don't need everyone to believe, you just need one believer. And fundraising is not the only way to building, right? Bootstrapping, figuring out the right mechanics, might economics is sometimes, it depends on the industry. You should not always think of fundraising as the mechanism. Some industries
Mhm.
require it, some industries can do without it. uh,
Sure.
Depending on what your goal is as an entrepreneur, that could also change a lot. So that is the second thing I would say. Third is, I would say that something which is more with respect to Calcutta founders I see, and a mistake I made as well. We are
Mhm.
very pretty much focused on getting the numbers right, which is great. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, the larger narrative, what is the bigger story, and
Mhm.
is extremely important. That is something which I feel sometimes is missing. What is the larger narrative that you are actually building? Blinkit was not something like this when Dipinder Goyal acquired it a few years back, but he had a
Mhm.
vision, a larger story around it. Today, people say the market cap of that might be greater than the food delivery itself.
Sure.
So, what's the larger vision we are, larger narrative, larger vision we are going after? And that is something I
Mhm.
think to think from day one, and something we are also spending a lot of energy to think about, because eventually there is a business which is going to make a return basis the pure economics, but then
Sure.
eventually the larger impact, which is
Mhm.
economics plus plus. And I think that economics plus plus is also important to think about. Specifically, anything you would think that it'll be interesting for folks starting up to know, anything specific you think, you usually think people are not too well read upon, and we can help them through this podcast. Happy to double click on that as well.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think one is, the fear of starting up, obviously, and fear of failing, which obviously I think everybody has to lose if they want to, step outside their comfort zone. But more is around how do I find these right people to knock on doors, right? How do I build that network? And I think the network effects are very, very important in today's world. So that is one. And the second is when you mentioned that, have that bigger picture in mind. I guess a lot of founders get so caught up in the day-to-day survival of their business that sometimes this bigger picture seems a little more, ambitious or far out of reach. So one, how do you build your network, find the right people in your ecosystem, and connect with them? And two is how do you balance your day-to-day survival with the bigger picture narrative?
So I think there is no easy way to figure out getting time away from the operations. But
Hmm.
primarily, I would say three things, right? One is getting the right team members and trusting them.
Hmm.
And sometimes 80% is as good as 100% if you're delegating. So that is something which we strongly push out in the company. I believe in, I push people that if I would do it myself, maybe it's 100% as per my liking. Someone else does it 70, 80%, it's great, let's move on.
Hmm.
uh, and not everything needs to be there. There's a Pareto, right? Everything, there's 20% of action which is giving us 80% of the results, and that might
Sure.
need to get 100% right. The rest 80%, even if it's 80% okay, so be it. So that is one. Second is building systems around it, whether it is internal systems, softwares, technologies, on how you could get away from the day-to-day operations, right from approvals, expenses, ERPs, internal dashboards.
Yeah.
That is the second. And third is figuring out dedicated, carved out time. For some
Hmm.
people, it's early mornings. Like for me, it's early mornings.
Hmm.
Maybe it is some people late nights, but dedicated carve out time which is away from the operations or away from the office, where you
Hmm.
are actually thinking about this. Because
Hmm.
all the things easy said and done, if you don't have that, if you don't have this, it does not really work out.
Sure.
And I think that's we didn't made this mistake, I would say, for a good part of that 17 to 20 journey, and
Hmm.
still make it, but I think it's reducing every day.
Yeah.
So that is the, and you asked me about the connecting, right? So I think like for example, just to give an example, while I'm part of TAI Kolkata, I'm also a
Yeah.
member of TAI Bangalore.
Hmm.
uh, I might not attend their events as often as I do here, but getting outside, spending once, depending on your time, resources, at least once a month or once a quarter in a Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay as well.
Yeah.
Because going just for a networking mixer there without any expectations. A lot of times, what happens is that you go to a networking event thinking, "Arey, I'll go here, I'll meet this guy, I'll do this."
Hmm. Hmm.
You go with a very result-oriented mindset,
Or I
and
have a list of people I have to go and meet and stand in front of.
that does not
Sure.
work, right? Because people want to
Hmm.
have a chat with, it should be a win for them also. They are also
Yeah.
learning something. If you're
Yeah.
only going to extract it out, then those
Yeah.
people don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I think figuring out that sweet spot
Yeah.
and then taking networking as a slightly longer haul, compounding,
Hmm.
serendipitous game,
Hmm.
where that
Sure.
again that 20/80 rule holds, where 20% of the people you meet is going to
Sure.
be only the ones you are gonna get that learning from, but it
Yeah.
is okay. So I would
Yeah.
say those are two broad
Yeah. Fair.
themes with which we think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing you mentioned with the Thai Bangalore example, I believe you would also said that entrepreneurs from Kolkata need to step out of Kolkata to see what's happening in other cities, in other cultures, and bring back that learning and experience. Because otherwise, we get too much tied into our own echo chamber, and that probably prevents some kind of innovation or creative thinking or even outlook towards business.
Absolutely. So I think I would say we are blessed in a way because we are away from the noise,
Hmm.
where it's not like there is 100 events happening every evening, and there
Hmm.
are so much of noise. So we are blessed with that way. But
Hmm.
what with the blessing, to really make sure we're delivering on that blessing, we need to
Hmm.
make sure that we are stepping out once in a while, talking to folks there, understand how they are building, what is the pace at which they are running, what is
Hmm.
the way they think about company building, how are they thinking about fundraising, how are they thinking about the larger picture. And
Sure.
sometimes you come up with really interesting insights
Yeah.
and something you never thought about, because people in a different place have different challenges, and with
Yeah.
different challenges, they would come up with different solutions to those challenges. And
Sure.
because and that solution might apply to a different challenge of yours.
Fair.
So that's also something which I've realized that happens.
Yeah, and one thing before I get into our last segment, and I know we're at the hour mark, is I think you mentioned that funding is important for business, but it's not always that you have to raise institutional funds or a big round of fund to do well. I mean, there are organizations that have been bootstrapping since the beginning. You and I both admire Abhishek Rungta a lot, who's built a business through bootstrapping, but a very different industry, a very different kind of business. But is there too much focus on getting the funding first and rather than building the business, or do you think these should coexist, or is there a preponderance on funding that you see more in today's entrepreneurs, that no, I want to raise funding first, I'm focused on funding? Is that something that you've seen, or it's a more balanced, mature approach?
So I think, I have two, three thoughts here. One
Hmm.
is something which comes to my mind, which one of India's large social media influencers, who also happens to be one of our advisors, said recently in one of his interviews, Ankur Variku,
Hmm.
he said that
Hmm.
fundraising and money is like vegetables to a chef is to money
Yeah,
to a
yeah,
founder.
I saw that. Yeah,
Think of
yeah.
it as raw material.
Hmm.
So I would say, while I am not 100% there, but I would say 60-70% that definitely resonates with me as well. So that is one. So it's a means, it's not an end. That is very
Yeah.
clear to all.
Hmm. Yeah.
Second, I think the industry has changed in the last 2 years. When I say industry, the VC ecosystem, people are looking at profits. There's a very strong, clear impetus on
Hmm.
profitability. Whether you look at a Zomato, how they have grown on the back of building a profitable business, and
Yeah.
lot many who has not been able to do because they have not been able to turn profitable. So I think that's
Hmm.
very clear now in the VC ecosystem. The talks are not around GMVs, it's around margins, it's around EBITDA, it's around PAT. So that ecosystem narrative has changed. Second.
Hmm.
Third, I think sometimes we need to understand that, as founder, what is the investor looking for? And some businesses, just by the virtue of the industry dynamics itself, nothing to do with the entrepreneur, purely the
Hmm.
industry dynamics, which could be A, highly competitive, B, highly government regulated, C,
Hmm.
not enough large TAM or addressable market, an investor
Yeah.
might not be able to get it. And we have realized this, right? We have had investors who want to invest, but they're like, Naman, for this much stake, I can't. I need this much. Otherwise, my economics, which I
Hmm.
will hold at your company, say 7 years later, 8 years later, will be this
Hmm.
much percentage. And that time, it does not give
Hmm.
me the ROI which I'm looking for. So
Sure.
even though everything is great, I can't fund it. So sometimes it's
Hmm.
important to realize that everything you're doing might be right, but still someone might not say that it's okay, and that's really fine, because
Yeah.
that the economics or the industry dynamics do not support it. And I
Yeah.
think these are three things to think about. And definitely fundraising should be purely a means. It should not be thought of as a success. It should be thought of as a validation, a milestone to
Hmm.
deliver more, because it's the fact that you have taken money from external people and
Hmm.
you are now accountable to them to deliver the next phase of growth. It's
Yeah.
not, it's their money. You have a lot of responsibility, and you need to keep that in mind. You can't think that you've raised millions so you can go around splurging. So it
Yeah.
has to be thought of keeping the thought process of building the larger picture, but with the some DNA of that bootstrapped founder who is very frugal, understands every
Sure.
penny, every paisa. So उसके दोनों के बीच का कहीं पर there is an intersection, and that
Sure.
intersection is where I believe the real sweet spot lies.
Yeah, I think that hungry and humble thing continues to play here as well for an entrepreneur.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
Right.
think very well said. I think 100% true.
Yeah. Naman, I know we are over time, but I just want to cover this last segment very quickly, and it's probably a recurring segment for all our guests. Is about Kolkata, right? You built a very successful business, Touchwood, out of Kolkata, and you're expanding all over. Uh, from your vantage point, the challenges that you spoke about, the advantages that Kolkata has or brings to its entrepreneurial ecosystem, which usually don't get that perception in popular media. Uh, where you stand today, how do you see Kolkata, Bengal, from your lens, as a place, as a hotbed for entrepreneurship, growth, development? What needs to change? What has changed in the last 6, 7, 8 years that you've started Now Purchase?
Sure, sure. So I think I'll speak more about the positives which I am seeing and why we think it's possible. I think the
Hmm.
challenges are more well known to us, I'm sure to the listeners today as well.
Sure.
I think in terms of purely looking at the positives, right? Let's just look at a professional, right? A lot of it depends on the quality of lifestyle and the
Hmm.
quality of life. I believe, the quality of life you could have in Calcutta is second to none, in
Hmm.
terms of your commute times being extremely low,
Yeah.
you having a cost of living which is between 15 and 30% lower than other metros.
Yeah.
Thirdly, you being in a place which has great options to venture out after your day of work.
Hmm.
So I would say that quality of life is second to none. And I've seen this, I was interacting with another founder from Indore, and I was
Hmm.
at his headquarters. They are a successful large successful B2B commerce company called Shop Kirana,
Hmm.
also funded by InfoEdge. And one of the things they've been able to do is actually leverage the same characteristic of a quality of
Yeah.
life and get a lot of folks back
In Indore, yeah.
in Indore.
There's been a lot of migration back in Indore. Yes, I have heard a few success stories of that as well. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't think that
Yeah.
same story can't be. There's no reason that same story can't be repeated in Calcutta.
Yeah.
That is the first thing I would say. Second, I would say that there are things changing. Like you just spoke about Hamza, it's a biotech company, right? Raising money from
Yeah.
100x. Things are changing.
Hmm.
I think earlier, like I said, when we raised funds, we may be the second or third you could count on one hand. Now that's changing with a story every
Yeah.
few days you hear. There is an Estacia, there is an M Pocket, there is an Hamza,
Hmm.
there is a lot of guys who have made it big on Shark Tank. Then there are the guys who have raised tremendous amount of funding and done well, like
Yeah.
wow, and
Yeah.
so on. So that is the second thing, which is things are changing. Third, I think again to make that change happen at a faster pace, whether it's the folks who are moving back to Calcutta or the folks in Calcutta, they have to understand that
Hmm.
this fast pace of growth or that exponential journey which some employees have had in startups in Bangalore or Delhi comes at the account of that hunger, drive, and just chasing the goal relentlessly. So I think
Yeah.
that same hunger drive is required to build that
Hmm.
strong ethos of work culture around it, because you
Hmm.
sort of feed off each other, right? And that happens when you're seeing what is around us, and that
Hmm.
really changes the game. And I think that's important to keep building on that and keep every day building on urgency, keep building on every day
Hmm.
on going that extra mile. And because I think urgency, right? Urgency is an important thing for a startup. A lot of people think of Calcutta as laid back. But what is
Yeah.
that urgency? It can be done tomorrow morning, but if it takes 10 minutes extra, can I just close it today so that I can push the ball forward because you're running in a chain? So, what is
Yeah.
that urgency? And while keeping all of these things impact, I think companies can build up in a great way where there's a lot of work life balance. And I think a lot of that is sort of things we also push for at Now Purchase, along with the other ton of growth and benefits which we want to
Yeah.
offer our team members in the company.
Yeah. Yeah. I think very, very well summarized, Naman. Naman, firstly, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. This is the first time I think we are speaking face to face. We've had a couple of phone conversations, but this has been wonderful listening to your journey and how you built and how you think. And here's us from Kolkata Calling, wishing Now Purchase and you and Akash all the very best for the future, and may you continue to grow and make Kolkata, more proud. Before we close, Naman, any closing thoughts, any words from your side, and then we'll end the live stream.
So I think, firstly, I would say tremendous initiative from you and your team to build Kolkata Calling. I see there's lots of followers, lots of engagement. And I think that is extremely great because there are interesting opportunities for folks to come back to their family, to come back to their parents, and still continue their professional ambition, their quests without compromising either of them. So I think firstly, kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Secondly, I think from our end, I think there's tremendous opportunity in what we're doing in the B2B metal manufacturing space.
Yeah.
And similar, because of that, there is tremendous opportunity for folks who want to come back and join ours or other startups or other companies. Even that, it's a lot of companies, a lot of our clients we see doing extremely well. Say
Hmm.
a Jupiter Wagons, a Titagar Wagons. These are large manufacturing houses who are
Yeah.
now doing extremely well based out of Calcutta. So whether it's industrial or startups, there is opportunities. Might be less in abundance, might come with some of its idiosyncrasies, but
Hmm.
I think there is opportunity available, and I would love to help and be part of anyone who wants to move back and or be part of a higher growth story within the Calcutta ecosystem already. We remain
Hmm.
available. People can hit me up on LinkedIn or just directly email me at naman@nowpurchase.com. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Subit. That's pretty much from my end. Yeah.
Wonderful, Naman, and thank you so much for taking time on a Sunday. And I know you have a lot of urgency, a lot of things on your plate, but really appreciate you taking this time. To all the viewers who joined us live, thank you. Hope this session was as insightful and interesting for you as it was for me on this side of the table. And you can find this video on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter Live, as well as on Spotify and Amazon Music. So thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another wonderful guest. Till then, Naman, thank you so much, and many, many congratulations and all the best.
Thank you so much, Sumit. Thank you, everyone who joined in on Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you.